Hi everybody, good afternoon. It's Ross Cook Balancing, and you're in my office, or you're in the little catacombs of my office. There's 3 or 4 monitors here, and this is where we do our work. This is where we do a lot of learning. There's also an office where we see clients, and then in the basement of that office we have a TV and sound studio where we make videos, and a bunch of videos, and a lot of auditory tracks. So welcome. I'm glad to see you here today. Today let's talk about and tell a little Dali Lama story, and then let's talk about the environments and the transactions of spiritual development. Okay, let's talk specifically about those. You know, the Dali Lama, there's a wonderful story about the Dali Lama where they went to ask him a question, and I think it's always amazing when people go to ask the Dalai Lama a question. There are these long, rambling questions that have 3 or 4 answers peppered into the question, so in the hope that the Dalai Lama will go, yeah, you've got it right, I can, way to go. And, that is the trend of asking questions anymore in the world. Instead of just asking the question and breathing and being silent and trusting and waiting for the, the brilliance of the person you're asking the question for, the connection to the person you're asking the question for. So one of these long, rambling questions was about this. Your Eminence, it's got to be great that you look at big businesses in the United States, airports, conglomerates, wherever Americans are moving all the time. There are now meditation rooms, and it's true, in big hub airports, there are meditation rooms, and in a lot of the big monolithic buildings in any city in the United States, there are quiet rooms and quiet spaces and meditation rooms. And the question was asked, wow, we really like this. We really want, this is really wonderful. What a development for the American people. Don't you agree? But it wasn't quite put quite that edgily, but almost. Obviously you agree with this. And the Dalai Lama, very kind, he said, well, thank you. You've obviously studied, and thank you for that question. And you've obviously thought a lot about that question. And thank you for the beauty of the question. And let me share with you, no, I don't think it's good at all. I don't think it's an evolution of the American human spirit. I don't think it is any of those things where the people are now in the middle of a hubbub day stopping and meditating. And the people were like, you could hear the air go out of the room. No, but the Dalai Lama said, look, Americans and many people, when they first start meditating, when they first start trying to answer the call from wherever they come from, whether it's in pain and illness or just doing the same thing again and again and again with more intensity, whatever their need, whatever their desire that's going to broach them into this new world, he said people tend to think of it as this, like a playground. And he said specifically Americans think it's like a playground, like a slide where a little kid gets up on top of the slide and he slides down this cool little slide and he lands at the bottom and he's like, yes, way to go. And he said that's sort of like how the Americans think about their spiritual mind and body development. He said, that's not what it's about. It's about a lifestyle. It's about completely changing how you think and the panoramas from which you begin to think. Okay? So we start there today. And we talk about you have that what they were is that was the wrong assumption, right? There was an assumption in that question, and it was a representative assumption of how people tend to think to get started. They get a bunch of rules, or they get a person, a Yoda to follow, or whatever, and they start there. The Dalai Lama would say, Emerson would say, Holmes would say, that it's not the word of God, but the experience of God that you're looking for. It's the experience of God that's going to change you, whatever you think God to be. An idea essentially has, in its word format, has no value or power until there is experience powered onto it, until there is emotion put to it. Does that make sense? And I don't mean just run out and, if you're an E personality, just like, I'm trying hard, No. We're talking about a panorama of wellness, setting the stage for transition, to think of things differently. The Guide for Spiritual Living talks about love, integrity, openness, empathy, honesty, inclusion, respect as the places you can go in your life to begin to fashion what does integrity and respect mean to me. That's not just the rules I inherited. That's not just a bunch of words that I then, because I'm really looking for the experience of respect, of integrity, of openness. I would even go a little bit further. I like those things as an idea and a good place to get started and begin in your transition. But one of the things I would like to see is I would like you to go to what is a spiritual, what is a mind environment? What is communication? What is collaboration? What is commitment and creativity? What is compassion to you? And how do we expand that out as the landing platform for everything else in my day? So then if I have a value that is kindness or openness, and I can take it to communication, collaboration, compassion, creativity, commitment, and I can take it to those things, I can begin to see and interact with the world slightly differently about it. Because we're going to need to involve our mind, body, and spirit slightly differently than we have before. We just please don't want to do the same things with greater intensity and a higher frequency again and again and again, because your railroad tracks, when you look at railroad tracks going to the horizon, they just get more narrow and more narrow and more narrow. Okay. So when you're looking to make these changes, make the changes at the mind level, at the spiritual level. Build a wonderful, embracing environment, a questioning environment, an environment where you don't know all the answers. And then spend time learning to love that unknown that comes with that so much. You know, Victoria, Eric, hi. Good to see you. You know, it's so important to find that embracing new question and not leap on the first word answer. Just to stay in the embrace of communication, collaboration, commitment, creativity, compassion. Now, your action verbs might be integrity, openness, empathy, honesty, inclusion, respect. They may be, how do my values relate to them? But I would go to as broad a base. That's why we don't talk about love as broad a base as possible. That's why we don't just talk about love only. We talk about unconditional love because it's big and it pushes our parameters and it makes us go to places where we don't know all the answers, and we then start to have essences and feelings of what we feel like as we connect to that, and that is the door to that opening of our soul, to developing into that poised soul where we're not just taking a little slide down a playground and landing in the sand and being like, "Whoa, look at me." All right? It's a partnership. It's an openness. It's a wholeness. Okay? You can see I get kind of ramped when we start with the Dali Lama right away. I just love his works and everything about him. So be one with the creativity of this. Be open with the questions of this. And until we talk again tomorrow, just go out and do your life slightly differently than you've done it today. And do it a slightly more open than you've done it today. And be embracing in communication, collaboration, community, compassion, creativity. And until then, we'll talk to you again. This is Ross of Ross Cook Balancing. And until then, Jomo.